I think last night was the first time this young team felt sort of the outside pressure of clinching a playoff spot. I think it was the first time this season that I felt that around them. And you could see it in their play.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Broncos and Bourbon. I'm your host, Phil Milani. Very excited about this episode as ESPN senior writer Jeff Legwold joins the program. Jeff and I go way back covering the Broncos, but his career goes way, way, way back. You know, he used to work for the Rocky Mountain News a long time ago here when Denver was a 2-newspaper town. He used to work and cover the Steelers for a very long time, cover the Titans for a long time. So Jeff goes way back covering the NFL. In fact, he's one of the very first people who ever covered a combine, and that's when the combine used to be just an exchanging of medical information on college prospects. Jeff was right there covering it, and now look at what the combine has exploded into. Jeff, every year for ESPN.com, comes out with his top 100 lists, ranking the college prospects coming into that year's draft class, and he's just a really football smart mind. And I think you'll find that in this conversation, he points out some things about Bo Nix and where he is in his development, what the next step might be for Bo. Jeff points out some things in this conversation that I think you'll find interesting and that you don't get a lot of places when they're talking about the Broncos. So that's sort of the point of this podcast, is to bring on people who can help educate, inform, and do it in an entertaining fashion. So I think that you'll enjoy this episode. If you do, please like and subscribe as we continue to grow the Broncos and Bourbon brand. Our nightcap this week, we're going to divert from our usual bourbon review since it's the holidays, and we're going to do a Brandy review. Had a request from a viewer earlier on this year to do a Brandy review, so now that the holidays are here, we'll do that. If you have some suggestions and something that you'd like me to review, please leave a comment in the video below. So with that, let me get to my conversation with ESPN senior writer Jeff Legwold. Leggy, thank you for taking some time to join the program. How have you been this year?
It's all good, Phil.
I miss hanging out with you, Leggy. I miss just getting to rub elbows with your greatness.
The original PFM, as I've told everyone.
Exactly. That's me. Leggy, a tough one for the Broncos this week against the Chargers. The first 3 drives scored a touchdown on each one. And then in the second half, it sort of fell apart there. What went wrong for the Broncos out in L.A.?
Phil, I think sometimes, you see a maturity test for a young team. And I think that was sort of a maturity test. So I think that was part of it. And then I think also they simply got away from, what they had done well early in the game. And that's the first time all season they've scored touchdowns on their opening 2 drives, let alone their opening 3 drives. So first time all year, they ran 7 of 10 times in the opening drive, 7 running plays in a 10-play scoring drive. They ran the ball 14 times the rest of the game. And it's just hard to frame that. Only 8 times in the second half. I mean, they had 2 11-point leads, and if you're not going to run the ball with a double-digit lead, I don't know, because Sean Payton keeps saying he wants to do that. So the fact he's calling the plays and expressing frustration that they don't run enough sometimes is really sort of the one big paradox of the season, because he said it almost every week, and he is the guy with the play sheet in his hand. And even ironically, last night, the cameras catch. He had written on the play sheet, run it with an exclamation point, and then they didn't do it. So it really is a quirk of this team and his in-game, play calling. What they've done with a rookie quarterback and some of the other things should be commended, but his continued angst over the run game that he controls is really a question. They've only got two games left in the regular season, but I got to believe if you're going to go to Buffalo or Pittsburgh, this time of year, you better be committed to running the ball when you have to.
And aside from that, what do you think of TV cameras like showing play sheets like that and getting that close, in the middle of the game? I mean, what do you think about that just overall?
I think most coaches who've done this a long time know the verbiage on a lot of offenses. That's not going to give anybody a great hint. Everybody's got the same frameworks. Maybe if he's got his section of the exotics, the trick plays or, some of the short yardage calls, I don't think, I think people are going to always have some angst over it on should you really do that? And coaches are paranoid all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But I think if they really, really had to tell the truth, they would say it wouldn't have much impact. I mean, because guys take, back in the day, everybody made copies of their playbooks. Coaches had 12 different versions of everywhere they had worked. It's a little different now that it's all electronic, but some of the stuff's still going on, to this day. So anyway, I think there's enough commonality. It's more the timing of the call, your hot reads, your hot calls at the line of scrimmage, that type of thing. I mean, Dan Campbell of the Lions, there's a lot made of Jamar Gibbs had posted a selfie of himself with some of their in-game adjustment calls on the whiteboard behind him. And Dan Campbell essentially said, if that really matters, we're not very good. So I think he actually spoke the truth when most guys wouldn't have.
Yeah. I know that coaches are very paranoid, so I just was wondering if,
I bet he will not be a fan of that, but he has one of the biggest play sheets in the league, so it's hard not to get it on camera.
Yeah, that huge thing.
It is funny, when I covered the Steelers way back in the early 90s, Ron Earhart didn't have a play sheet. He just called the game with nothing in his hand. So it's come a long way.
Yes, it has. Back to Sean, though, what do you think that it is that he gets away from the run so much? Because, it seemed like everything was working right in that first half. And then, he tries to get too cute, or it's a little bit his ego trying to be like, hey, look at this, where really just some smash mouth football is going to get the job done.
Well, I think some of it is just his basic philosophy that he's being true to. He likes to use a lot of personnel groupings. I mean, they routinely sub 2 and 3 players in every play. You don't see a lot of teams doing that. I mean, some do, but it's like a line change in hockey almost every play for them among the eligible receivers. 3 on, 2, 3 off, and that's a lot. And you're every time you do that, you're moving around on the big play call sheet. So. But that's something he believes in. He doesn't want a defense to get settled and all of that. I think also they're trying very hard to keep Bo Nix as comfortable as possible in his rookie year. And his comfort level is in the shotgun, in 3 wide. And they have not always been very good running the ball out of that set. And they're in that set far more than they are anything else right now. And there are moments over the last month where they're in the shotgun almost exclusively. And an awful lot of coaches I've been around, including Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak, would say you're never going to run the ball great all the time out of the shotgun because you're taking away half the field in terms of predictability. Unless you're going to cross the running back all the way across, in front of the quarterback or behind, you're giving up that, sort of that indecision a defense would have about which way they're going. So that, I think it all fits together. But a big part of it is they have a rookie quarterback they're trying to keep very much settled and give him as clean a look as possible at the coverages.
It's kind of like pick your poison there, because you would think that running the ball would actually help Bo
Right.
out too. A run game is a rookie quarterback's best friend. So yeah, I guess
I think
it's
if he could
just
be
choose.
under center more, and I think, personally, it's just an opinion, but, I think they should put him under center more. He's a good enough athlete to handle the footwork. There's going to be some bobbles because there always is. He has not played under center very often, his entire college career. So, but I do think I think he's certainly a good enough athlete to do it. But this isn't a new problem. It's easy to forget now because of the playoffs and the Super Bowl trips and the scoring record season. But that first year, Peyton Manning, uh, you know, and his first year at Kubiak, rather, they tried the pistol a lot because they were trying to work out the same problems. Manning was in the shotgun most of the time, and Gary wanted a more traditional looking running attack, and they, for a few weeks they tried the pistol, and then they finally scrapped that too because it wasn't going great.
Yeah, and that playoff run, it was defense and running the
Yeah.
football that got him there. So yeah, you
And
need the
they ran a little more with Brock Osweiler at the 7 starts.
yeah.
Brock was in the lineup, and then when Peyton came back, he was under center a bit, and they ran the ball in the playoff win against the Chargers here. When he re-entered the lineup for the
Oh yeah.
first time.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You got to run the ball this time of year.
Especially if you go to Buffalo. I just can't
Oh,
imagine if you go to Buffalo in a few weeks because you're the number 7 seed, that you're going to be able to sit Bo Nix in the shotgun and throw the ball over the place, and you'll do okay. I just can't believe that's going to be a way to go. Or Pittsburgh, even go to Pittsburgh because you're the number 6 seed, or however it shakes out. If Baltimore somehow is
yep.
one of those seeds. Again, those are all places you're going to have a hard time living on chucking the ball around out of 3 wide in the gun.
And you don't want to get into like a shootout with Josh Allen, or
Yeah,
that
no,
Ravens offense.
you
You
have to
just don't want to
limit
do it.
possessions somehow. You can't trade.
Yeah.
You can't trade possessions with them. Or give have 3 and outs or 40-second possessions because you didn't get a first down.
With Bo, do you notice, those line changes? I've noticed even like sometimes they still have trouble getting back to the line of scrimmage quick enough for him to look around and survey things and snap the ball in time. Like I think they had to burn a timeout against the Chargers at one point. It feels like that even is another thing that's like still at this point in the season something they're working through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to do. It's why a lot of teams don't do it as often. But this isn't new for Sean Payton. He's done it his entire career, and he's had success with it. So you can't, from his perspective, he's going to think, look, I've done this successfully for a long time. I think it can work here. But I think that's why they stay in the 3 wide so much, to give Bo Nix as clean a look at the protections and the rushers as he can have.
With Sean, were you a little surprised he didn't go for that 4th and 5, 6 yards there, down 3 late in the game?
Yeah, he said they considered going for it and then just decided that, they felt like they could get a stop and get the ball back. But at that point, I'm not sure any decision they would have made at that point would have worked out. It seemed like they had lost all the momentum, and when they didn't do much with the turnover and some of the things they had go right, you started to think. And then the penalties were,
Oh,
were just, awful again. I mean, there were 9 points directly related to bad fouls. The one at the end of the half results in
free
the
kick.
first free kick, fair catch free kick in decades, for 3 points. And then the late hit on Herbert on a 3rd down, kept their drive, and that ended up being a touchdown later on. So that's 9 points right there because they couldn't keep the flags off the field, and they had multiple offsides on defense, which is, you got to you're looking right at the ball. That's one of the most frustrating fouls I think, for any coach in the league, because you're staring right at the football.
Yeah, they're just trying to read that snap count there for sure. With the penalties, I know that Broncos fans are going to be like, the refs really, hosed them. But really, when you got that many, you just got to, like Sean said after the game, play a little bit smarter here and coach them a little bit better too, I
Yeah, I
think.
mean, the fair catch play is a foul. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
foul.
yeah,
And, Sternad, if your elbow comes up high and even grazes the helmet, that's getting a flag. They make that clear
yeah,
when the refs visit in training camp. That is not a surprise to anybody. And even Sean Payton thought that was a foul.
yeah.
So, again, and offsides, all you got to do is look right down the line of scrimmage, and they are offside. So, I mean, these are not quirky judgment calls. They're committing fouls at bad times.
And of course, they didn't get the pass interference call on Mims there, but it feels like to me, refs have been told not to bail out a team on an underthrow. You could debate whether that was an underthrow or not, but it feels like that was obviously contact, but they didn't want to bail the Broncos out on that play. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think, if I go back over all the plays, I think there's been several this year where Surtain or Riley Moss or PJ Locke have been just as physical with the receiver and not gotten a flag. So I mean,
Yep.
pass interference is the one that's always going to be the conversation starter, because it's probably the biggest judgment call left in football on either side.
And it feels like Sean Payton in particular just doesn't get those calls. So, you know,
Well, he would say that for certain. Yeah.
um, what have you liked about Bo, and what have you thought about the way that he's been able to develop over the course of this season?
Yeah, Phil, I've always been one of those dinosaurs in that, in my experience, I've always thought guys do a little better if they sit a little bit, but that's not the way it's done, and it won't be done that way anymore. We've seen it all over the league. I mean, it's Kirk Cousins got benched with a 9-digit contract. It's not done anymore. But I still believe in the big picture. Even coaches would admit, it would have benefited him some to sit a bit, but that wasn't the case. But I like his composure about it. I think he's been probably the most composed in terms of the day-to-day, what the job entails Monday through Saturday, when nobody else is looking other than his teammates and his coaches, not fans, just him doing the job. He's handled that part of it really well. He works really hard. There's a humility. There's sort of a confident humility about him. His teammates see him work hard. He doesn't ask for a lot, doesn't demand a lot. He just works and performs. He's accountable. I thought the tough loss in Kansas City, they blocked the field goal, and the last play, it's the locker room is just, everyone's crushed in there. There's anger. There's all kinds of emotions. I thought he handled it the best of anyone, and he was, a rookie in there. So I think that really serves him well moving forward. That's really going to make him a good pro, I think. His next step will be, and he's already feeling it. Defenses are starting, people adjust quickly in the NFL. I say all the time, it's the biggest difference between college football and the NFL is how quickly the opposing coaches take you apart as a player. And it happens fast. And if you're not ready to move with it, there could be some issues. And teams are already forcing him outside the numbers. They don't want him in his comfort zone. And if you look at some of the interceptions over the last 3 weeks and the near interception last night, a lot of them have come between the numbers and the sideline, because that's where defenses are funneling the ball by what they're showing him. And that'll be his next hurdle football-wise, including in the playoffs, because things only get squeezed tighter in the playoffs. But his mental approach to the job is a very good one, and I think that it's probably more important than anything. You can clean up your footwork, you can work on all the rest of it, but your mental approach to the game, a lot of the times what you come in with is what stays with you. And he's got it. He's got the approach of a long time pro.
Yeah, that confidence and, just being voted a captain as a rookie. I think that in the way he talks to the media, you could definitely tell like he's just got that mature confidence and just the way he carries himself. Leggy forcing the ball between the sideline and the numbers. Is that like an arm strength thing that he's having a hard time zipping it out there, or what is the challenge?
Could be footwork, Phil. It could be, a lot of the other throws, you can have a different arm angle. You can straddle throw a 12-yard out. The bigger throws, over the greater distance are going to require you to be more fundamentally sound in your lower body. You're not going to be able to just, turn your hips and flick it like you could, to bail yourself out. It just requires a lot more conscious effort about your footwork and all of those things. And I had asked, defensive coaches have been telling me all year they thought that would be the move people would make, and we've seen it. He was very efficient last night, but when he did put the ball in harm's way a couple times, those are the throws that it's happening now. And two of the interceptions against the Colts were in those zones as well. So, again, that's why year two may be his biggest sort of wrestling match with what people are doing to him and how he's going to have to work through it, and that's still to come. But I think the playoffs will be a preview of that for him. And I think the Broncos and him have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, everybody sort of thinks like it's just a linear thing, like if you're playing, you're getting better and better and better and better. It doesn't really work like that. There's like ups and downs.
Play. You got to have a very conscious plan for how you're doing it and why.
Does it feel like Sean has done a pretty good job of bringing him along and putting him in positions to succeed?
I think Sean has made some concessions along the way. They've used more play action than he would traditionally use. They've used more pre-snap motion than he has traditionally used. They've run more read option looks with mesh points than he's traditionally used. So he has done, his part on that. And then especially the last 5-6 games, the 3-wide shotgun has been their base formation. And earlier in the year, they tinkered with more things, and they still show more things during the game, but their base formation is Nix in the gun with a very open formation so he can see what he needs to see.
With Bo, like just in general, his presence there on this team, a team that's been like looking for a quarterback forever, a team that's like trying to, to take that next step after the Russell Wilson stuff didn't work out. What do you think he's done for this team just overall? Like, it feels like the culture is just so much different this year.
Yeah, I think some of it is this is a young team, and Sean Payton, this is new for him. This is his first rookie quarterback to start for him. In New Orleans, Phil, they routinely had one of the 5 oldest teams in the league every year. In his 16 years there, they had 11 drafts where they didn't even take a full draft class. 11. A young team is not something he has dealt with, and he's been almost force-fed this one because of the Russell Wilson decision and what that did to the salary cap. So that I think that a young team has had that attitude. They don't carry history with them. They don't carry all the playoff misses. They don't carry all the angst, and I think until last night, I think last night was the first time this young team felt sort of the outside pressure of clinching a playoff spot. I think it was the first time this season that I felt that around them. and you could see it in their play. Now, I think that's why Saturday's game in Cincinnati is going to be interesting, because you're facing a team that can score every time it has the ball, and you can't afford to have any sort of nervous tiptoeing around from anybody in that one.
Yeah, because it did feel like in this one, like, the free kick sort of changed momentum a little bit. And then after the Chargers got on a roll there, felt like Broncos just like didn't have anything left to like sort of turn that thing around. And it felt like maybe the pressure of the moment, like maybe it was starting to creep in a little bit there. So that's
Nobody made the
interesting.
play. In those situations, you got to have somebody that makes the play. I thought Abrams Drain made a play that had potential, and then they just, they didn't do much
Yeah.
with that change in momentum.
That defense has been making so many game-changing types of plays, making the play like that, scoring touchdowns themselves. Are they starting to come back to reality a little bit here? Because they give up 32 to the Browns, 34 to the Chargers. Are we finding out a little bit more about what this defense is about, or are those just two little abnormal games there?
Their metrics, but the advanced metrics are still very good among the league leaders. But it's a hard way to live. I mean, they've scored 5 touchdowns on defense this year and 2 safeties. That's a lot of points coming from the defensive side of the ball. And at times they have feasted on some offenses that aren't very good too. But last night's another example. When they choose not to match Pat Surtain on the best receiver, they have trouble controlling the damage. And, they didn't against Cleveland. They didn't last night. They didn't against the Colts. They didn't against the Ravens. I mean, you look at the games where the damage has been greatest. It's where Pat Surtain isn't removing a quarterback's favorite weapon in the passing game. And, I think against the Chargers, you're thinking, if you're the Broncos, if they put him on McConkey, they're just going to put McConkey in the slot and make Surtain work through all the traffic and sort of mute his physical superiority over McConkey. So that was probably some of the decision. But the games where they've surrendered the most are the games where Pat Surtain is not on the top receiver just because of the way the team plays offense, or maybe they don't have a top receiver, that is worthy of that all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. It does feel like the Broncos maybe have caught some teams off guard over the course of this year. And as time has gone on here, maybe the rest of the league is starting to figure out some things that are like, hey, if we can do this and Surtain can't do this, we're going to have some success here. And I guess it's all about adjustments then, huh?
Yeah, and, you know how it goes. If you're going to be as aggressive as they are, it only takes one mistake and your run fits, one missed tackle. That's the thing. If you're going to be as aggressive as they are, and that's how when they've played well, it's been a benefit. So you can't say they shouldn't do it. It's who they are. But your margin for error is very small. Last night, a big run is because one missed tackle.
Mm-hmm.
That's, in run defense especially, you only get one mistake. Everybody's got to be in the right gap. Everybody's got to make the tackle in space, or bad things happen. And when you let a team pop a few runs, then suddenly play action and the rest of it looks much better.
Leggy, how much do you read into the fact that the Broncos only have one win this year against the team that currently has a winning record? They're 1-6.
I think it shows I don't begrudge. I don't think a team should ever apologize for victory, ever. You play who's in front of you. It's not your fault if the league gave you the NFC South this year as your crossover division. And Sean knows the NFC South, and he ran the table, against them. Those were 4 of the Broncos' best games of the year when you look at them. So that's some of it. But again, every team, you think if you're good, you should beat the bad teams in front of you if you're a playoff team. But I think it speaks more to their sort of readiness to move deep if they make the playoff field, are you really a contender? Or are you hoping for lightning? That I think those are two very different things. I think the Bills have a very different approach to the postseason if they get there than the Broncos would at this point. And I think it just shows you where they are on the growth chart of, a young team, second year of Sean Payton, and the first of 2 years. Next year still is a salary cap struggle because of the Wilson decision. So they're still not in the prime sweet spot of their hopes. They're probably a little bit ahead of schedule, really, because they've beaten the bad teams in front of them.
Yeah, and you're excited about Bo and what he could eventually become, and maybe in a couple of years you add some pieces, and then now you're talking. But as far as this year goes, Leggy, should fans start to feel a little concerned here because you lose the one game to the Chargers, and now all of a sudden you're like, okay, the Bengals and then the Chiefs coming in here. What is there a little bit of nervousness creeping in?
Well, I think it's hard for everybody behind them to catch them. It's, they got a couple 6-win teams, and they already beat the Colts head to head. So if the Colts win out and the Broncos lose out and they tie, the Broncos win the tiebreaker for the 7th spot. And they get their head to head chance against the Bengals Saturday. So, and who's to say if the Chiefs don't need anything in the finale, that could help the Broncos in the end.
Yeah, they might be fortunate with how the schedule makers laid this thing out with the Chiefs in that final game. Okay, last one about
night was they let that one get away. They had an 11-point lead twice in the game, and to not get that win is on a game you gladly flexed because you thought it helped you more than it did the Bengals. Yep. And, well, we all know the best laid plans, and that's another one.
Exactly. Last one for you about this Broncos team and sort of looking ahead to the future. I know that you go and do the deep dive on the draft and everything. What do you feel like this Broncos team could use the most moving forward? How would you improve them in this offseason?
Well, I think, the fact they re-signed Garrett Bowles gives you an indication they were not fired up about their prospects of having a better replacement at left tackle if they let Garrett go into the market. So that fixed one thing that was going to be on the agenda. And look, we're talking about a team that has only taken – Garrett Bowles is the only left tackle they've taken in the first round since Ryan Clady in 2008. So a prime position the team has rarely taken in the draft. And since Bowles, they haven't taken any tackles in the draft with any pick. So it just shows you that re-signing him was a big deal, or they were going to have to do something they have not done in a very long time, which is expend some draft capital at a really important position for their quarterback prospect. I think an impactful tight end is a must in this day and age. If against nickel defenses, that's the matchup you can win over and over again. And people know I've said it and they don't agree, but I'll die on the hill. They could have had Brock Bowers at 12 and they could have had Bo Nix later in the first round if they had been patient and willing to try, but that's not how it worked out. But people want to tell me Brock Bowers isn't worth the 13th pick of the draft. I would argue you better look more closely.
Yes, he's had a tremendous season.
But I think they need an impactful tight end. Phil, if they're not going to sign Nick Bonito, and they probably hope to at some point over the next year, you're going to have to find edge players all the time. You're always going to have to take edge players. You're always going to have to take corners. But an impactful tight end is a must. And I think, his proverbial joker player that he's had in his offense, whether that's a running back like Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, that's his important player in his scheme. a
Yeah.
certain kind of running back and an impactful tight end are probably early on the docket in the next draft.
Has he tried to use Mims a little bit in that role, just moving
They
him into
have.
the
They've
backfield?
tried to
Yeah.
use Mims there. He's had some moments where they like him. They really
Yeah.
hoped Greg Dulcich could be it, but it just never panned out after he had the early drops in the season and he never really recovered in the coach's eyes. And I think that affected his confidence overall.
With Bo, it sounds like you weren't surprised that he fell to the Broncos. And why? How do you think the Broncos just like found this marriage that works so well? I mean, he was a 6 quarterback taken. I mean, nobody else thought maybe Bo could do this, or do you think it's just because of how well he
No,
meshes
I
with
think
Sean?
they thought he could do it, Phil. But you're talking about, the first round is a different area. I believe the Broncos had 2 quarterbacks they would have been willing to take in the first round: Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. They had no shot at Daniels. He's off the board.
Yeah.
With the second pick, and that left them their only other quarterback they thought was worthy of the first round, which was Bo Nix. Now, I talked to many teams that had Bo in the 40s, that's still a great prospect. We act like that's, oh my God,
Yeah.
but you're a top 40 prospect in the draft. You're still a really good prospect. But I think some of it was that the Oregon offense did not have the route tree the NFL likes. Majority of his throws were at or behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of catch and run stuff, stuff where the receivers are facing the quarterback, not a lot of verticality. Those are all things the NFL, they don't think you can live on that stuff in the league because the speed factor on defense is exponentially higher.
Mm-hmm.
People run that stuff down in the NFL over and over. You look at Miami this year, they've not been nearly as impactful on offense as they were last year when they sort of surprised people. Well, then everybody took them apart and they've had some injuries. And now it's a much harder, go for them because of the speed factor on defense.
The league makes you appreciate like a guy like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady that they could just do it for years and years and years and years.
Because they did what we were talking about earlier. Every year they looked at how people were attacking them and they adjusted.
Yeah.
You look at Brady, they had years where they ran the ball a lot. And he played that way. They had years where they used 2 tight ends. They were one of the first teams to go Gronkowski, Hernandez,
Mm-hmm.
and look that way all the time. They went no huddle, shotgun, 5 wide before anybody when their undefeated season in the modern time. So they adjusted and did it a lot of different ways. And we all know Peyton was a master at looking how people attacked him and moving past that and adjusting and dealing with it. And it forces you. The guys who can't do it won't be good for very long, or they just won't be productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Leggy. Well, I appreciate your insight on this Broncos team, but I want to know a little bit more about you. I call this segment Phil's Phive. Okay.
Phil's Phive. Okay.
Yeah, you like? See?
Okay. You've
Okay.
asked me more than 5 over the years, my friend.
Who is your favorite player growing up?
Oh, growing up? Probably Walter Payton.
Because I know you're from Illinois, and just sweetness, the way he ran the ball, or what?
Probably Walter Payton. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
We all did the high step in high school with high school football. We all thought we were Walter Payton. We spatted our shoes with the tape the way he did. We all did it all the same way.
Did you jump over the line like he did?
Well, that was a little more difficult for me, but that's I would have liked to.
Who was your favorite reporter growing up? Was there a guy who was sort of like a mentor to you that you're like, if I could do that?
Not a mentor, but I didn't go to a very good high school. We didn't have a lot of things, and people who went there weren't really looking to move on to college very much. So I was the first one in my family to go to college on my mom's side of the family in any generation. So Uh, and we didn't have a school paper or anything like that. But one time for unknown reasons, I called Don Pearson at the Chicago Tribune. And I told this story in the Hall of Fame meeting when Don retired and left the Hall of Fame Board of Selectors after decades of being on there. And I actually was on there with Don, but I called him cold and left a message at the Chicago Tribune, and he called me back and essentially let me ask him, because I didn't know anything about writing or being a sports writer, or I was just intrigued by the job he had. And he spent a long time talking to me and wasn't impatient and didn't think it was stupid, and answered all of my questions. And, like 30 years later, it was really fun 40 years later, it was really fun to tell that story in front of everybody. But Don Pearson took the time. So I always try to help folks or answer any questions they have, because somebody like me might be out there. Who knows?
Yeah, paying it forward. Yeah, I love that. That's amazing, Leggy. What about, do you have a most memorable interview with an athlete or a coach?
I remember, it's just, there's been so many people who've been good to me in the process over the years. I've I cracked the code a little bit, and just that if you're straightforward with people and you ask questions in an honest, straightforward way, and you've done your homework, they will answer them, whether they're uncomfortable or not. They will answer them. And I've never, ever had a player say to me, "I'm never talking to you again." They've been mad at me. We've talked it out. But I've been very fortunate. Some of my favorites here are, sadly they're not with us anymore, but Demaryius Thomas and Darren Williams were two of my all-time favorite people to speak to and hang around. But the locker room is filled with guys I enjoy talking to about football. They teach me things. They answer my questions. They look at my little scrawls and tell me what's up. And when that doesn't happen anymore, I'll probably move on. But it's still fun to me, and I still enjoy it.
So that kind of gets to my next one. I know that you've had such a long career here. Was there a favorite person that you enjoyed covering, throughout the years, that man, that relationship that you built with that person sort of stands out among the rest?
That's what I mean, Phil. I can't tell you how lucky I've been. I see players around town I've covered, all the time, and we talk, and it's great. I go to coffee with some guy. I've been to coffee with Mike Shanahan many times since he hasn't coached the team anymore. I've seen John Fox at other places. Even Vance Joseph comes back here after I've covered him as the head coach, and I've just been really, really fortunate. I enjoy, I just talked to Aqib Talib on the phone for a story the other day, and it was, I told him I only take 15 minutes of your time. We ended up talking like an hour and a half, because he's just
wow.
And just things like that. Or I talked to Champ Bailey for a couple things, and you circle back around and see people after they've retired or moved on. And the funniest one right now is Jonah Ellis, the Broncos rookie. I covered his dad, Luther, here, and I remember Jonah in a onesie getting out of their van. They had this big van because they had all those kids. They had all these kids, a huge family. The Ellises were a huge family and are a huge family. And I can remember Jonah being this infant, and I was talking to him in the locker room the other day, and it's, you want to feel old. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Generations you're covering. Yeah.
Nah, it's been a few father-sons. I got Bruce Matthews and his sons. And so I've had a few father-sons kicking in right now. And I think it really hits me when I do the draft, and now there's all these birthdays after 2000, the year 2000.
Oh yeah, I know.
That rattles my cage a little bit.
You mentioned Mike there, Shanahan. I know Broncos fans are animated about his Hall of Fame
he should absolutely
candidacy.
be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question. Should have happened years ago. But that I am but one voice in the wilderness on this one. I think he's getting in. It's never the speed we want it or people want it to be. That's the quirk of the Hall of Fame. But he's every bit and more a Hall of Famer than some of the coaches who've gone in front of him. But that's just the process, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't always go in order. It's not like necessarily like Mike Holmgren.
I think, I believe once you have the gold jacket, Floyd Little's gold jacket was the same as John Elway's, even though Floyd's took 40 some years longer to get.
You just got to get it.
Gold jacket is the gold jacket, but you'd like them to get it when they can enjoy it with their families, when they're well enough and can get around and enjoy all the fruits of it. You'd like it to happen then.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then the last one for this segment is you've had a tremendous career and you've been very fortunate, like we've talked about, but is there still one event out there that you haven't covered that you'd like to?
I like to go to Olympics, I think. I was close to going a couple times, and for whatever reason, my newspaper decided I couldn't leave football for that long to go cover the Olympics. But I guess I'd like to see the Olympics, but you're talking to one fortunate guy. I've done the Stanley Cup. I've done the World Series. I've done 27 Super Bowls. I mean, I've done NASCAR, IndyCar. I've minor league hockey.
You've covered it.
Fairground stock cars. I've powerboat racing. I once covered a sailboat race with no wind, Phil. You want to talk about writing a difficult story. The boats did not move for 6 hours and they called it.
Watching paint dry.
Yeah, I still had to write a story. So that's a toughie.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, that's awesome. Awesome to hear that. And let's wrap up here we've touched on this a little bit, but if there's a young guy or lady out there who's interested in getting into sports reporting, what's a piece of advice, career advice that you'd give them?
That's a good question. And I do give advice a lot. I would tell people to be nimble, but be a writer first. And the rest will come more naturally. And always remember, all journalism is content, but not all content is journalism. So know the difference. Learn the difference. Just because you're out there doesn't mean you're doing content. A journalistic company will pay you. Getting paid is what you're looking for if you want to do it for a living.
Yeah.
So you want to produce content that will get you paid. And, however you can do that is more power to you. But I would always tell people, not enough people work on their writing, because if you can write, everything else will fall into place. And we don't spend as much time in school or anywhere else writing now because everything's so explosive. Texting is an explosive type of, short burst. Everything's a short burst now. So we're losing the ability to write overall. And I think the people I know who succeeded in the business always remembered, if you can write, a lot of the other things will fall into place along the way, including, on camera. Just the creative process is better if you can write, because you can express your ideas and plan them and think about what you want to do visually, if you can put it down in front of you too. So
yeah.
And I always tell, when I interviewed at ESPN, it's unbelievable. I've been there that long now, but they actually asked me at one point, what do you have any questions for us? And I actually asked, why the hell are you talking to me? I'm a newspaper guy, and they told me, and these are some of the most creative people in media work in that building. I mean, they're amazing. I mean, you just walk through the building, you just see Emmy Awards, and it looks like the the night sky, so
Yeah.
many glittering trophies everywhere. I mean, they're the most creative people we have in this business. And they told me, if you can write, we'll teach you the rest. And I've always carried that with me. And but that would be my advice to people is do not leave writing behind because you think it's hard or difficult or a pain. Work on it however you got to work on it, right? Write poems, write rhymes, write rap, write music, write anything, write a grocery list. Just work on your writing.
A good way to stand out in today's world. If you could write, you'll rise to
You
the
do
top there.
anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're writing on paper. You can
Yeah.
write on a computer, you can write on a laptop, you can write on a tablet, you can write at
Yeah.
some point, however this business looks 10 years from now, 20 years from now, somebody's going to have to produce content that people react to, that they aggregate, that there are people who aggregate content and there are people who create content. You want to be the person who creates content because you're getting paid most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Leggy. I appreciate that. That's great career advice, and hopefully that's useful to someone out there who's watching. And I really appreciate all of your insight. I mean, whenever we talk football, I feel like I'm learning a lot, and I'm getting maybe some angles about like this Broncos team that not everybody can notice and point out, and then articulate it the way you do. So I really appreciate your time, and obviously it's been wonderful again to catch up a little bit here.
Oh, Phil, you're the best. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Leggy. My thanks to Leggy for spending some time here on the show, and I hope that you enjoyed some of the insight that he provided there, specifically on Bo. I thought that was interesting where he talked about where maybe Bo struggles a little bit and how defenses are starting to game plan for this Broncos offense. Clearly, the Chargers, the first 3 drives, it was not working, but then it felt like momentum started to change, and just like Jeff said, maybe some of the pressure the Broncos are feeling here started to creep in a little bit, and they were not able to answer what the Chargers were doing. Chargers scored 21 unanswered in that second half. So, look, Justin Herbert is a tremendous quarterback. The throw he made on that last touchdown was insane, but we've seen more from this Broncos defense. They're capable of more, and I was a little bit disappointed with how many points they gave up to Justin Herbert and company. Maybe, like Jeff was saying, got to explore how they're using PS2 and ways that they can help him be more of a factor in the ball game. And, the Broncos pass rush was not getting home against Justin Herbert, and we've seen time and time again when the Broncos need it, that defense makes a play. Did not get that against LA, and look, the running game just, they went away from it for some strange reason, and I can't really explain that, especially with how they were running the ball with so much success early. Audric Estime needs to be getting these carries, and he needs to be moving the ball, and they need to give him some chances there. And yeah, I don't know. Things got a little bit weird in that second half, especially with Sean just didn't go for it on a 4th down. That's just like not the Sean Payton that we all know. Like, he's aggressive and particularly wants his offense to be able to make some of those plays that determine the outcome of the game. And they punted that football there. That, I think hindsight obviously is 2020, but that I don't think was the right move in that situation. So I don't know. We'll see how the Broncos answer here, because all of a sudden now they got the Bengals and the Chiefs, and who knows? You don't really want to rely on the Chiefs sitting their starters in order to make the playoffs. You just don't want to be in that situation. The Broncos want to take care of business next week against the Bengals, and it's going to just be that game is going to be so awesome. That's going to be like the biggest game. Sean Payton after the game always likes to say, "Hey, we're going to be in bigger games than this." The Broncos are going to find themselves in a much bigger game in the regular season than this Bengals game with so much on the line. So they got to bounce back. They got to run the ball a little bit more. They got to let Bo do Bo things. And Bo, he protected the football a little bit better against the Chargers, but still needs to be able to have an impact in the second half there. So I want to see more from Bo as we move on here. And that defense, got to figure out a way to, you live and die by playing on the edge there. We'll see if they're able to make those big plays against Joe Burrow, who's putting up MVP-like numbers. So the success hasn't come for the Bengals as a team, but Joe is having an outstanding year. Jamar Chase is obviously the best wide receiver in football, so this is going to be one heck of a game. And gosh, what a gut punch that was against the Chargers. With so much on the line, having a double-digit lead in the second half, that just drives me crazy. And afterward, the Nuggets lost on a buzzer beater against the Trailblazers. Just a bad night for Denver sports fans. So, moving on, looking forward to the holidays coming up here, Christmas next week. And with that, wanted to do a review here of a Brandy. And I picked one that is like readily available for everybody. Got this one for like $25. So it's accessible. It's at a price point where maybe if you I don't really drink brandy, okay? But I think that around the holidays, everybody likes to have like a little something different, something that feels like a little fancy. Brandy is right in that sort of in that ballpark. Even though this is supposed to be a pretty good one, it's XO, which means extra old. I always thought that these are like very funny. I thought that would have stand for something like really fancy. It's just extra old. Or like VSOP is very superior old pale. So like, and this was just $25. So why don't we crack it open, sort of see what the bottle looks like. I like things that come in a box. Obviously, like Hennessy is sort of the most famous brandy. That's what a lot of like celebrities drink Henny. But this one is supposed to be pretty good. I like the bottle. It kind of makes it feel fancy, If you're wondering, like, okay, what is brandy? I don't really drink brandy. It's fermented fruit, okay? And so most like brandies that you'll find are from grapes. And so they come from, a lot of them come, like Cognac comes from the Cognac region in France. Armagnac comes from the Armagnac region. And so it's kind of like Champagne comes from the Champagne region, but it's just sparkling wine that comes from Champagne. So therefore it's champagne. And so that's what like Cognac is. This St. Remy XO is all from French wine, but it's not from Cognac. So it's not technically a cognac. But I believe this has been made since 1990. So let's open it up. I don't have a very special glass other than my Broncos rocks glass. So we could go ahead and pour this here. Sort of see what brandy you can you drink it neat. You can drink it on the rocks. You can put it in a cocktail. You could have it as an aperitif. You can have it after dinner drink. I think that most people think of brandy, you're like sitting by the fireplace with a cigar or something. But I think that, it's more accessible than you would think. And so XO is like sort of the more fancy stuff. And I think you would save that for like neat or on the rocks. But a VSOP, a VS, you could put that in cocktails, I would think. This XO is like $25. The St. Remy VSOP, which is also great value, what I'm told, you can find that for like $18. So not a huge difference in price from the VSOP to the XO. The nose is like sort of sweet, but you don't like it smells a little different than bourbon. Like you don't really feel like much burn. This is 40% alcohol here. So 40% on this. And it smells like kind of sweet vanilla, a little bit of spice. I'm imagining that's what the taste is like too. Pretty smooth finish there. Lasts a little while, but yeah, you're getting like vanilla, dried fruit, a little bit of spice, maybe like a touch of ginger. It's nice. It drinks nice. It's very easy. It does taste very smooth. Like you can tell that it's like an XO here. But it's just like different than bourbon. It's like similar but different. I know that's what you come here for, that kind of analysis, right? That's what you come here for. So Yeah, so it's just fermented fruit. Another like one like from France is Calvados, which is from apple, and that's like in the Normandy area. So any kind of fermented fruit that's distilled, that is what is technically a brandy. I think you could do like pears, and then this is from grapes, and so it's nice. And I like, during the holidays, trying something a little different, trying like a sherry, like, like these, like British movies or like, fairy tales or that kind of stuff. They're always drinking like sherry around the holidays. So that's what the holidays are for, trying something different. Maybe you're going to get this as a gift. Maybe you're going to give it as a gift for somebody. It comes in this nice box, that's kind of always nice as a gift. Same with like a nice scotch or something. You give that as a gift, and it is a little bit special this time of year. So anyway, hope that you enjoyed this episode. Something a little bit different here to wrap it up. If you did, please like and subscribe. That helps us grow this Broncos and Bourbon community. I love reading all of the comments. Very nice comments. I find that the YouTube commenter is much different than like the X commenter or the Instagram. It's more a community, and it's more real, and it's more like, let's have a conversation about something. And I do really appreciate that. So thank you very much for that. And I know that was a tough game for the Broncos, but still 2 more to go, and still everything in front of the Broncos, and they control their own destiny. So that's where you want to be this time of year. So anyway, happy holidays to all of you in the Broncos and Bourbon community. I hope that you can enjoy some special time with loved ones and friends. And I want to say that I really appreciate you as we build this show here. So thank you very much. Happy holidays. That's going to do it for us. I'm Phil Milani.